Assalamu alaikum students. Today I will discuss the story The Hollow of the Three Hills by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne was 19th century American novelist and short story writer. His works belong to the subgenre of dark romanticism, and his works deal with history, religion, and morality, as history, religion, and morality are the most prevalent themes that we may find in his works, in his novels, as well as in his short stories. And in most of his works, he used to depict evils of humanity and themes of morality, which used to have deep psychological complexities and moral lessons for individuals. And the symbols that he used to make use of, they refer to isolation and guilt of the individual, the uncertainties of good and evil, and the continual hold of past on the present, wherefore referring to the themes of guilt. The story is written in 1830, and during this time witchcraft was practiced in North America. Thus, that makes the story more believable to the reader of that time period. Hence, that also makes it important for us to know the historical context of any story before we proceed to read the story, because that's going to make it more significant. Hence, getting to know that the witchcraft was something which was established and which was practiced in North America during the time period when the story was written, that makes and that create more significance for us when we will read the story. Since we see that the dark romanticism was the subgenre of the present story, and what does dark romanticism deal with? That deal with themes of guilt, fear, and mortality, and that includes elements like ghosts, crime, insanity, and melancholy, where the characters suffer from various disorders and they encounter terrible events and they are haunted by the past. So these are some themes which are prevalent in the dark romanticism subgenre. So, what happens in the story, The Hollow of the Three Hills by Nathaniel Hawthorne? That's a story about a young woman who's stricken with sorrow and despair, and who, under the spell of guilt, sin, and despair and disappointment, goes to a withered witch, a crone, an evil crone, in order to find out what has happened to her family. And she's given three alternative perspectives, three visions by on reality by the witch. In the first vision, she sees her parents, and the parents are shown as talking about how disappointed they are in her. In the second vision, she sees her husband, who's sobbing during her funeral. And in the third but final vision, she sees that her own son has passed away and that his coffin is being taken to his tomb. So these are the three visions that are shown to her by the old crone, by the withered witch, which actually make her to collapse on right on her foot. So this is the story. This is the summary of the story. Now we will move towards the characters. We will see that there are only two characters in the story, the young woman and the old crone. The young woman is the protagonist of the story, who's anonymous. She is unnamed. That makes her a mysterious character. We actually don't know why she had abandoned her family. We don't know the reasons. That also adds more mystery and more suspense in the story. And we came to the she came to the old crone to know about her loved ones, because she loves her family and she wanted to know about them, about she is concerned about their welfare. Therefore she comes to the old crone to know about them. And this is also shown that she feels intense guilt over her actions, and she is also willing to sacrifice her life in order to know about her family. And that also depicts her an irrational character, as her maybe that is her feeling of remorse or feeling of guilt which caused her to act irrationally, as she wanted to know about her family and she was disturbed and more concerned about them. Then what happened that we see her distressed during the whole story as Crone's disturbing revelations they cause her more distress throughout the story, and this was after the third and the final vision where she learns about her child's death that the young woman becomes overwhelmed by her shame and her guilt and perishes at the Crone's feet. The young woman's death that comes as a tragic consequence of guilt and a victory of evil. So that was the story of the young woman. That was our character, and now we will move to see the character of the old crone, the withered witch. She was an ancient and wicked sorceress. The young woman has betrayed her family, and the old crone grants the young woman three visions upon her request. Each vision details how our betrayal has torn her family apart. The old crone is depicted as an evil whose prayers were not meant to be acceptable in heaven. Her reference to the young woman's torment and eventual death as a sweet hour's sport, these phrases which I have put in inverted commas, these are directly taken from the text, and these are important because she called the young woman's death, the old crone called the young woman's death as a sweet hour's sport, which depicts her malicious woman and which also makes us question the truthfulness of the old crone's visions, that the visions that he had shown to the young woman, whether they are truthful or not. So that also makes us question the truthfulness of those visions. There are various literary devices which are sparingly used by the author in the present text. Including those literary devices, there are irony, foreshadowing. And what is irony? Irony in literature means when the opposite of what you had expected actually occurs. Foreshadowing is also sparingly used, and this is a literary device that refers to a later point in the story. Sensory details, that means using the five senses in the text: sight, touch, sound, taste, and smell, and the use of the sensory details that adds depth to writing, to any piece of writing. The themes which are prevalent in the present story that we may find in the text, the themes include the theme of sacrifice, the theme of death, guilt, darkness, loss, theme of good and evil, and theme of supernatural. Guilt and shame, that is the most prevalent theme, as the young woman was the victim of guilt and shame, and she experiences regret because she had left her family for unknown reasons. The reader is unaware of the reasons for which she had left her family, and she visits the wicked old crone and because she wanted to know about her family and how they are doing, and in return she showed her the three visions, and in those three visions she described the kind of more despairing attitude of the family towards her, and the that also shows those three visions. They describe the consequences of the woman's betrayal to those whom she had left behind, and those whom she had left behind, they include her parents in the first vision, her husband in the second vision, and her child in the third vision, which left her with more disappointment, and at the end she became a victim of the tragic death. So that also points to another important theme, which is the social expectations from women or women's role in 19th century, which is the hallmark of Nathaniel Hawthorne. He used to describe in most of his works, he used to take this women's role in 19th century as an important theme. And we see that the protagonist, the anonymous young woman, experiences remorse for leaving her family and receives harsh judgment from others for failing to fulfill her responsibilities as a daughter, wife, and as a mother. And that is also illustrative of the attitude towards women in the 19th century America. And that also specifically discusses the idea of the separate spheres for both men and women. And Hawthorne used to discuss this idea of separate spheres in the present story too. After emphasizing the rigid gender roles that are prevalent in American culture, Hawthorne goes on to say that Western civilization despises and punishes those who refuse the obligations of their designated spheres. As in the present story, the young woman, she was not able to fulfill the obligations of her designated sphere, and that was the sphere of her being a daughter, being a wife, and being a mother. She was not able to fulfill those duties, thereby she was rejected by the society. So those individuals are shown as having moral failings. As in the present story too, we may assume that maybe she was seen to be having the moral failings, and she was rejected by the society, and she could not return back to the society. That's why she was regretful, and she became a victim of a regret at the end. As this is shown in the second vian, where the people are talking about her, and they are saying that she has sinned against natural affection and that she had left her child to die. So this would imply that the woman's exile to the hollow was not completely her own doing, and that is an example of how society rejects women who are unreliable and who are not able to fulfill their obligations, and hence they are being rejected by the society and not allowed to return back. Here there are some few references that I have taken directly from the text and quoted over here, and that they include the physical description of both characters. And though you may find the physical description of both characters in the beginning of the story, this is very important for you to uh, see the physical description and directly quote it whenever you would write about those characters. That the young woman, she was described as a lady, graceful in form and fair of feature, though pale and troubled. The other was an ancient and meanly dressed woman, that is about the withered witch. And the way she says it to her, kneel down and lay your forehead on my knees. This was the way. This was her attitude towards a young woman. And there are also a few more phrases which are important. And the way the old withered woman spoke, a smile glimmered on her countenance, and the lady trembled, the young woman. She trembled and cast her eyes upward to the verge of the basin, as if meditating to return with her purpose unaccomplished. So you may have a look at the direct quotes from the text and just try to quote them whenever you attempt any question. From the exam point of view, you may have a look, you may try to find out, and you may try to write about the different themes, the prevalent themes that I've also noted down over here, and write in detail about those themes. Comment on the ways Hawthorne develops suspense in the hollow of the hills, and you may also do a comparative analysis of the two characters, the old crone and the young woman, and hence that may also mean a comparative analysis of good and evil. So that would be fine if you prepare those questions. Thank you for today.